I have so many targets on my back at this point from stuff that I've said or posted. People want real. They want authentic.
One of the most brilliant and creative minds in our industry, the one and only Dr. Christian Subbio.
The older I get, the less I care what people think of me. That I found was, very instrumental in my Instagram growth.
Gone are the days when creating materials for online businesses was difficult.
Social media.
Facebook,
TikTok,
Instagram.
Probably like 75-80% of my new patients were from Instagram.
Chris Subbio is not only one of the most sought-after plastic surgeons, but also a thought leader in our aesthetic industry, who is not afraid to stand up for his principles and to trigger important debates. If you are an aesthetic injector, a nurse, a doctor, a dentist, or clinic owner, please sit back and relax. But remember, like every treatment, this podcast comes with a risk. You may end up becoming very successful. Welcome, Chris. Welcome to my podcast. Great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm flattered to be invited on here by you.
So first, I want to know what keeps you most busy at the moment.
It's at this point a little bit of everything. So it's my surgical schedule's gotten busy. I'm a plastic surgeon in Philadelphia, so I do a lot of breast and body work. But I'm trying to keep my hands in injectables as well, which I very much enjoy, and then as well, trying to grow my very small business, expand my business locally, trying to keep up with social media and creating content, trying to man my small children. So it's a little bit of everything. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here. You understand better than anyone, but a lot of different irons in the fire, as they say.
We all know you are an amazing plastic surgeon, one of the most sought after. But today, I would like to mainly speak about creative art, social media, and how it impacts our business. You have made it to, if I'm not wrong, to 140,000 followers on Instagram, plus 35,000 on TikTok. Is that right? And probably other channels?
Yep. My main focus, my main love has always been Instagram. I've been doing that like 2015 or 2016 is when I started really spending some time on Instagram, and it's the platform with which I am most facile. And I just love Instagram. I love the platform as a whole. Now, of course, TikTok is the relatively newer age, and while I've never quite grasped TikTok as some of my colleagues have. It's not my favorite, and it's not the one that I'm most comfortable with. And at present, I'm spending so much time with all these other things that any time I have left over, I'm trying to just focus and do Instagram rather than spreading myself too thin. I don't want to be that guy who's trying to do too many things at once and then doesn't do anything well.
Sure. So while you're speaking about the channels, TikTok, Instagram, are there any other important channels at the moment which you would recommend, like YouTube Shorts or LinkedIn?
I think if I had the time and expertise, I would be focusing more of my time currently on YouTube Shorts. So and TikTok, of course. I'm told that YouTube Shorts is the up and comer, the one that it makes most sense to invest one's time in, because like anything else, you're going to be most successful on these platforms when you're an early converter. Timing is everything. So I was lucky in that I was a little bit ahead of the curve in Instagram in 2016. Very few colleagues were doing Instagram well or spending much time on Instagram in 2016. And that's when I started spending a lot of time on it. And I think, the timing plus creating good content is what allowed me to grow very rapidly on that platform. Now, again, look, 140K followers I have on there is nothing compared to some people out there. Some people have 1 million, 2 million. Some of my friends on TikTok have 7 million followers. So I don't want to act like, oh, look at me. It's all relative. But back to the point, I think the most important thing is to get on up early when it's going through the growth phase. Because like anything else, there's the growth phase and then it tapers off and then you're on the downswing. And many of our colleagues are still trying to get into Instagram at this point. And it's just, it's difficult. It's not impossible, but it's more difficult. As with new ventures, it's even with the same content that years ago would have had you exploded, it's just the market is saturated. So I think the key for people going forward is to really identify those platforms and get on the early crest of the wave.
Yeah, that's what my experience is. I just the past weekend I was with Dean Schneider. I don't know if you know him. This guy who's living with his lions. He has 10.1 million followers,
Wow.
and yeah. But these are lucky punches like Julie Horn. This guy is good looking, has tattoos, and he's cuddling with lions. That's amazing content. So that might be an easy game. So what I figured out, I admire your account so much, and I tried so many times to get a tiny step in this direction, but I just don't have the creativity, the humor, and probably don't not the time. And I just recently started on TikTok, and it's so hard. I've been told to post 3 times a day, which is a nightmare for me, and finding 3 topics, being creative, delivering valuable content 3 times a day, and I'm with 190 followers and stuff like this. It's just not worth doing all the work, and 200 people seeing my stuff. So how do you said how you get to the success, but what would be your advice for nurses out there, doctors who are just starting off, or like people like me? How could I have more attention, be more decisive, more special?
So, I mean, I guess on Instagram, which I know best, TikTok is its own flavor, but this advice would probably work for any platform. I think it's a matter of, again, once the wave is already passed, it's an uphill battle, but not impossible. I think it's a matter of finding creative ways to get yourself out there. So as opposed to just posting 3 times a day, even if it's amazing content, it's going to be very difficult because you're posting to let's say you have 200 followers at a given moment, it might be amazing content that took you, if you're doing 3 times a day, that may have taken you 2 hours to create that content, going to those 200 people, hoping that they share it. It's just very, very difficult. So I think the best advice is finding creative solutions to get your content seen by more people. Now that may mean doing collaborations. I think that's a free way to get increased exposure. Reaching out to your friends who have good followings and then doing collaborations. That's one way. Then your audience becomes their audience becomes your audience. That's one way. Another way is paid posts. And I'm not talking about boosted posts on Instagram or TikTok. I'm talking about going to micro influencers and paying them to allow for them to repost your content or to duet your content or for them to talk about your page. That I found was, very instrumental in my Instagram growth. Number one, the content has to be quality. If it's trash content, you're just not going to succeed no matter what you do. So that's a given that the content has to be quality. But then if you have a quality 30-second video that's really funny or really educational or really interesting, that piece of content has to have some intrinsic value to it, number one. So it has to be a good gold nugget of content. But when you have a good piece of content, then you could spend some money. Because in the end, what we're doing is all an investment, right? Time is money and money is time. It's all interchangeable. So if you're willing to spend an hour a day, I don't know how much time you're spending on your 3 posts a day, but I imagine it's not easy. It might take at least an hour, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the way I think of it is, an hour of your time, I don't want to guess what an hour of your time is worth. But if you're spending an hour for this content, why not take, a really good piece of content and take that money that you're now spending into creating 3 pieces of content that might not get seen a whole lot, and instead take that money and go to someone with, 500,000 followers and say, hey, if I give you $500 or $1,000, would you interact or repost or duet my thing? Again, so some people are like $1,000, that's crazy. But when you think about it, you're already spending $1,000 in your time creating the content. But the key here is that the content has to be brilliant. It has to be really good and we're all capable of these things. And then the key, and this is really important, is to make sure when you do something like that, let's say you identify someone that has 2 million followers on TikTok and you reach out to him or her and you say, hey, would you repost my or duet my piece of content? And they say, sure, but it's going to cost you $1,000. You might be like, okay, I'll try it. In that case, what you have to do is make sure that when someone agrees to do something like that, that your page is stacked. And what I mean by that is it has your best content at the top of it. And that is where pinning posts is so valuable. Your best content should be at the top of your Instagram page. Your best content should be pinned at the top of your TikTok or YouTube or whatever, so that when that person who has 2 million followers now is posting your funniest video that you ever made, and someone's looking at it like, hey, that Dr. Bertram, he's doing funny. Like, let me see what his page is about. They're going to go to that, and that you want your best stuff showing.
Amazing, Chris. I remember back when you have been here to Inner Circle, and I have been to your masterclass, and it was brilliant. And I only can recommend every listener to go to your Needle and Art event, which is taking place in Philadelphia. You probably talk about how to create content, right? We will talk about that later.
And as well, like one of the who spoke at my last meeting was Masha Varnowski's. Like, she's anyone that is interested in growing their social media accounts, at least on Instagram, her tag is Masha, MASHA .social media. And her page is filled with, like, every one of her posts is centering on how to grow your Instagram account or how to grow your social media, but with special attention towards the aesthetic industry. So I am a big fan of hers, and I was really lucky that she agreed to speak at the meeting last time. Anyone listening who's looking for strategizing about, in particular, aesthetic Instagram or aesthetic TikTok.
Thank you, Chris. We will put it in the captions for sure. But again, going back to your masterclass, I saw how much effort you can put into creating content. I mean, you are quick in the meanwhile because you're skilled and you're doing a lot. How much time do you spend on creating content per day or per week? And question number 2, how much impact does it has to your business, in your opinion?
So those are great questions. I am not someone to be followed in the sense that I am sporadic with my posting. I am not disciplined when it comes to my social media posting. I think it's because so many of my days I'm exhausted. I'm getting older. I'm getting so many things going on. I'm just tired all the time. So it's a self-fulfilling problem, because the busier I have gotten as a result of my social media, the less time I have to dedicate to the social media. And it's what I love doing. So right now I'm going through an existential crisis about how much time should I block off 2 days of my week and say, I don't care if I don't earn as much. I enjoy doing the social media, which I'm considering now, because it really is all about time management. So to that point, you have to get good at the apps. All right. So you can, it is, of course, I think these days becoming essential to have someone helping you. I still don't, but you need someone helping you to make it possible, if you are busy clinically, to have the time to spend on social media. But regardless, you have to be good at the photos. You have to be good at editing yourself. I mean, they can't do everything. You have to keep your hand in your own social media, or it becomes not your brand. It becomes impersonal, which is why people follow you, which is why people come to me, because they know me from my social media. They trust me. If I had someone else handling that completely, they would not trust me. I would not be coming through my personality in my social media. So you ask, how do I, what is my plan? I don't have a good enough plan. I need to be more disciplined. I need to dedicate an hour every day to social media, or 2 hours. Right now, to answer your question, it's sporadic. Some days I do no social media. I might go a week without posting, which is not good. And then I might get inspired and creative and relaxed after a vacation, and then I'm posting 4 times a day for that week. So, so number one, I think my advice which I need to be better about following, is to be consistent and disciplined, to carve out the time from your daily schedule. If you're looking to get busier, you have to invest. Like, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You're either spending money for some $5,000 magazine full page ad, which not a lot of people are reading these days, or you're spending that time, building some social media, which a lot of people will see. So back to the point, I think you need to become very facile, very good with the apps, so you can edit quickly.
Would you like to share a few?
Sure. One is called Video Leap. It's a VIDEOLEAP, Video Leap. And that is a brilliant tool for video editing. It's what I do most of my videos on. And I'm someone who took the time, a couple of years ago, I learned how to do Apple Final Cut Pro. That's another brilliant one to use on your PC. You can make Hollywood movies on that. Some Hollywood movies are made on that. So I've studied all, not studied. I've studied on YouTube how to do audio and video and lighting, and in a very basic way, of course. But it has made all the difference for my content. But the key is, when I first started doing this, I wasn't that busy. I had just opened up my clinic. So I had all the time in the world. I was doing these amazing, all the very complex stuff on the PC. I don't have time for that now. So the key for me has been to transitioning those things to the apps on the phone, which luckily have become amazing in that 5-year period. Stuff that I could only do on my PC before, now I could do on Video Leap. And it still may take me a half hour, but I can produce some amazing things that look very polished and professional, and sound and are lit very professionally. Pardon this. Normally I would have my background better. I'm in the building next door, which is a piece of shit. But but it's all about getting familiar with the apps and spending the time. Again, these are all investments of your time. It's not just about investing your time in creating the content. It's about investing time in learning the things and learning the skills.
Yeah. And how much do you're still doing it by yourself, right? You don't have any people working for you or for...
Yeah, and I think that's part of like being like a little bit of a perfectionist when it comes to this kind of stuff. I don't want, very like any kind of amateur artist, I don't want to give up control over these things. I'm like, I want to create everything. I want my hand in everything. I want to be editing everything. So that's been difficult for me to yield the phone and let some other people make some content for me. But I have to, because at this point I'm at the breaking point now. So it's I'm going to have to.
So coming back to the impact to your business, how much of your patients would you assume are coming by social?
It's interesting, because when I opened my clinic, 6 or 7 years ago now, I was working for a hospital before that. But, when I first started with Instagram, probably like 75, 80% of my new patients were from Instagram, which is like incredible. Like who knew that a social media app could deliver that much business? It's testament to the fact that if done well, it is a very powerful tool. In that time, all those patients that have been coming back to see me again and again for injectables or for surgery, now I have built up a word of mouth. So my referral business is much more significant now. And it's difficult to quantify now, because here's what's happened. There is word of mouth. So patients will tell other patients or other potential patients about me, but then they'll say, oh my God, you have to check out his Instagram. So then they will go to the Instagram. So, and then they will hear me teaching and speaking and showing my best results and doing all these things. So the patient that comes in now is a hybrid patient. They're word of mouth, but they know me from Instagram, and they trust me, and they trust that I'm an expert, and they trust that I'm honest. So now word of mouth and social media has really become like hand in hand for my practice.
Cool. Chris, we met first when you have been here for Inner Circle in Switzerland last year, and to be very honest with you,
which was amazing, by the way. Like, it's anyone listening who's considering that, I was blown away, because it was a very optimistic project that we're going to make some a really elite meeting at a price point higher than other meetings, but really that we're not going to focus on the price. We're going to focus on the fact that people are going to leave like, man, that was a lot of money, but the best money that I spent this year. I've never had such a great conference, and goddamn, you pulled it off, man. So it was very, very much impressed. So much of you was impressive. I don't want to gush, but like you're really to be commended. Everything you do is excellent, and that's something I really admire.
Thank you, Chris. The feedbacks were amazing, and I really enjoyed these 3 days. But anyhow, before I met you, I had a lot of respect and was slightly afraid. I'm worried because some of your content somehow is, well, I like it, to be very honest, and I think in most points you are absolutely right. But it is true that you sometimes stand up for your principles and speak out. Filler prices, whatever. But then I found out when I met you in person, you are such a friendly, nice, polite person, and that's the total it's a total difference to what the impression is on Instagram for me. So that was enlightening. But would you share with us why you trigger these debates here and there, and does it help to grow? Who you address with this, more the industry people or more patients?
I think it's a little of each. Because it's an area of overlap. I think let's say the topic of filler prices or the practices of the big companies, that is of interest to both the clinician and the patient. So a lot of the stuff is an area of overlap, which is great because then it's interesting to all of my followers. Um, you know, uh, I do take, I am very opinionated. Okay. And I, I don't know. I'm not in love with the industry, to be honest. I think we talked a little bit. Like my passions are in art and in this, so I've come to this field in a circuitous way. So now that I'm here, I don't. I feel a little bit more honest about things because if something annoys me, I'll say it. I'm not so in love with injecting that I can't criticize injecting. I'm not so in love with the companies or so grateful for what they've done for me that I can't criticize them when they're doing something I find unethical. So I'm very principled, and I think that's why when I take a stance, I may be a bit strong in that stance. And that's it might be coming from Philadelphia, where it's a cold city in the northeast of the United States. It's in the underdog city right next to New York, where Rocky Balboa came from. We're very feisty people here, so we're very much opinionated. And to your question, I think it's helpful because people want real, they want authentic, and people get angry every day, and they get indignant every day, and people bitch and complain about the filler companies at the conference. Everyone, I'm just saying what a lot of people think, and I hear this all the time when I go to meetings and when I speak. Is like, oh my God, I feel the exact same way. Thank God I'm not crazy. And I'm like, of course, so many people feel this way about filler prices, about claims made about fillers, about the way the industry idolizes and builds up people, these like celebrity injectors. It's a lot of people feel this way. I don't know why more aren't talking about it. I don't care if I offend people. I don't care if I offend the companies. I don't care if the companies never let me speak for them again. I don't want to. So I think that affords me a certain degree of honesty that a lot of other people don't.
Cool. That's amazing. I love that, Chris. So I agree with you, and I think that helps. I also had the feeling that posts which are realistic or authentic are the best and work the most. So, but what I did before, in preparation of this podcast, I took a few of my female employees and showed them your account. Most of them know you, and they know I'm a big fan of you, and they all would go to your clinic and let you do the surgery on them. But I asked them what their impression is, and a few of them, most of them who don't know you, are quite new in our clinic. Let's say 50% of them said, "Oh, I might doubt a little bit because some of his content is quite like the emo Subbio and the finger mode, and the other 50% were blown away and immediately wanted to know you, wanted to meet you." Do you have any feedback on which content works, maybe the before and after, or the education feedback? And do you have the feeling that some of your content causes harm on your business or so? You gave the answer already, but I just want to get back
Yeah.
to this point.
I mean, I think most important to me is being authentic to myself. So, like I've mentioned, I don't care if I don't make as much money. If you told me you can either do what everyone expects you to do and do what they want you to be and be the prim proper doctor and you will make twice as much money next year, I would not do it. I don't care. I don't let money dictate what I do. Happiness for me is more being myself and being true to my own values. And I'm a funny kind of guy. I don't take myself too seriously. I love stand-up comedy. I love comedy in general. So, to that extent, I don't care if I am not as busy. Um, but again, I have found that people, at least, and I don't know if there's any cultural differences, but at least here in the States, the percentages I think would be a little bit different just based on the feedback I've gotten. Now, again, that people might not be giving me feedback to my face about that, but um, in my experience, people appreciate a doctor who does not take him or herself too seriously. You want to be, it's disarming. People know that when they meet me, I'm friendly and I joke around and, I'm not too full of myself. That is very valuable as long as you can demonstrate that you can provide the goods. I say this all the time when I speak on this. Um, you can't do the stuff that I do, all this funny, silly content and humorous content, if I weren't taking the opportunity to post really amazing before and afters a couple times a week. If all my account were funny and jokes and this, I wouldn't have any business. People would not take me seriously in a clinical sense. So I think that is very, very important. If you are going to veer into comedy, which is the most valuable content as far as I'm concerned on Instagram and social media, is comedy. People want to be entertained during their boring workday. So comedy is so important. But if you're going to do that and reap the benefits of the comedy and you want to maintain your patient base, you have to, at the same time, balance out your comedy with amazing before and afters or amazing teaching. Those that will allow people to know, oh, he's so funny, but man, he does a great tummy tuck. That's the balance. If you're going to employ humor, you have to do so balanced out with serious clinical things.
Chris, you just touched the topic money and said you don't do the stuff for money and you don't care about money that much. And a few questions prior, you said you just battling a little bit with you. And I remember back here in Switzerland, we had a small chat about that, about purpose. And I know your purpose is probably exactly this: creating art, being humorous, doing creative stuff. Uh, what holds you back from taking off 1 or 2 days and
I
getting into it?
appreciate your talks. I still think about your talks at Inner Circle because even though I haven't figured out the answer for me yet, and it's been a while, but it really has me thinking about it more and more. For me, the problem is it's the constant, oh, well, if I could just get things together here, then I'll be able to pull back. So it's this push and pull of wanting to create an excellent clinic. Um, but to do so, you need to be all in, as you know, better than anyone. So for right now, it's this idea that if I can just create that excellent clinic this year, then the rest of my time I could just take 2 days or 3 days. It's just pushing it off and off. So that's my difficulty. But I'm talking about it every day. I mean, I talk to my wife all the time, like, honey, we don't need to make as much as we make now. Like, let's what number could we be happy with? And like, what does that look like if we were to pull back another day? And because the thing is, this last month I took a week off. And of course the revenue dipped accordingly. And for someone who doesn't care about money, it's to watch the revenue dip. It's like, oh, it's a little bit scary. So look, all of us are, I could say I don't care about money 100 times, but it's a hard thing I'm trying to train myself to actually, take the steps to disengage myself from money.
So what I can share with you, the bigger your clinic gets, the more you are involved. It's not happening that you will get the clinic to a certain extent and then it's running. So why not, here an idea, why not maybe rising prices as there's so much demand for your surgeries, and then taking off a day or two and having the same revenue?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
I've considered that. The problem, as I see it, what my fear with that is, the more I start to charge ahead of my competitors, I feel like the expectations go up.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, I still have complications. I still have a patient who gets an infection or a breast capsular contracture or a wound opening. Anyone does. Any surgeon that tells
Like
you they
everyone.
don't is
Yeah.
like everyone. So, but the problem is when someone's paying twice as much as the competitor down the street, sometimes they feel, what? I paid twice as much and I have an infection. Like, so it's for me, it's very much this fear that with the increase in prices, I'm going to have to deliver something that's impossible. So again, these are all mental roadblocks that I have to overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm, I'm trying to heat in the other direction. In the meanwhile, I have 140 employees, and I would like to do more speaking stuff and discover myself, writing a book, doing a TED talk. But I find it's so difficult to get out of this wheel. It's just not impossible. If you build it up, the clinic needs you. It's really hard to get out of that wheel.
Yeah, and we're designed biologically speaking, like we are designed to want security for ourselves, to provide for us and our families, and it's to turn down money is a very difficult thing.
Yeah, but that's true. But it's, in my opinion, it's psychological. Both of us could work probably 3 days a week and could feed our families easily and have a
Uh-huh.
good life.
Yeah.
It's a mindset thing, but it's an interesting topic. Coming back to social media, Chris. Um, I went on a first class flight to South Africa, booked it with miles, didn't pay it in money, and I just made a post of it because I thought maybe it's interesting for people, and it did well. It wasn't that creative, but it was interesting maybe for people who hasn't done one. And then someone posted on Instagram, "Time to unfollow," and I took down the post again because I felt offended and said, "Oh shit, what I did something wrong." How do you deal with hate comments? And you probably
I get it all the time.
have
I get it.
some.
I have so many targets on my back at this point from stuff that I've said or posted. It's you can't like look. It's almost like you can't concern yourself with small-minded people. All right, you're not posting that to brag. I just from what I've met you, I'm pretty good at reading people. You are not a braggart. All right. So if you posted a first-class flight to someone and someone trying to unfollow, it's like Jesus Christ, man, calm down. Like it's like deal with whatever is going on in your life. Like that's what I've come to realize when people come at you, as long as you're a good person, like, if people are coming at you, it's more about them than it is about you. They're miserable for some reason. Maybe they're not making enough money. Maybe their business isn't as successful. Maybe they don't speak as much as they wanted to. Maybe X, Y, or Z. Like I and believe me, I used to get much more into it. Like someone would come at me like, fuck you. And I'd come back and I start like, typing. I'd be like, oh, I get this. And it's just like, it's a waste of time. And as someone like yourself, you're building big, important things. Like you should not concern yourself with the opinion of small-minded, small people. You're on to bigger things. As long as you're being true to yourself and you're being a kind person and and you have integrity. If someone has a problem with you, fuck them. Really, like
You find it easy to deal with that because I somehow couldn't. I thought and I swore at myself I will give a shit on it, but I find myself just being offended for some
nah,
reason.
it's
I don't know.
nah. Look, if I'm giving the impression that I'm completely carefree, then I'm lying to you. It's hard when someone says like unkind things about you for you not to take it a little bit to heart. But I have learned. I've gotten better. It's a work in progress of me just again recognizing that these are miserable people in their own lives, and like they're attacking you because they're jealous or they're envious of what you built. So it's just, and that goes for anyone. It doesn't need to be you with your massive business. It could be anyone who seems to have a good life on Instagram and you're posting your beautiful family or your nice house or your beautiful steak that you cooked that night. And people see it, and if their first instinct is, oh, this makes me angry, this makes me offended, like they can deal with it. I'm getting better at it because the older I get, the less I care what people think of me. And I think that's a life skill.
Yeah, that's cool. Chris, we probably both very busy, and as you said, as we older we get, the more I realize that time is the most valuable asset, and time management and self awareness is a big topic. How do you balance your life out? You have family, you have two kids. How do you make sure everyone gets his time and you get your Chris time, your me time?
Again, I'm a work in progress, but I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to do time blocking. So I know when I come home every day from work, if I come home at 5 and my kids go to bed at 7, then I'm going to do my best to focus on them. And my kids and my wife, my family is the most important for me. So between 5 and 7, and I'm not perfect. Sometimes I'll find myself sucked back into my phone, but I'm really trying to block time for them. And this weekend, I have a free weekend this weekend. I'm like, oh my God, nothing going on, nothing on the schedule. What are we going to do? Like, I could be like, oh, well, let me go to the work office and make some content, which I would love to do. But instead, no, like, what can we do with the kids this weekend? Like, it's all about keeping our priorities and keeping them in focus, and what's really important in life. Because how many times have you heard the old cliche of the old man or woman on their deathbed? None of them are wishing that they spent more time making money. It's about, their interpersonal connections and building of excellent things, and exploring your passions. That's what life is about, not money. So I am getting wiser, I think, in my old age.
That's wonderful said, and I think that's good advice for the listeners. So, Chris, we're slowly coming to the end, and let's have a view on 2023. What's happening in your life, or what could you recommend, especially in regards of some events? How can people meet you? How can people learn from you? Could you give us some insight, for example, to Needle and Art? I would love to come. I'll try to do that. When is it taking place? And
It's late September. I think September 23rd, 24th, something like that, in Philadelphia. And I'm going to be posting about that this week, I believe. The tickets are going to go out next week, I believe. But it's that's my baby for this year. That's my thing. My excellent thing I want to create outside of the business this year. It's just a little conference where people can come and learn about social media, and in relation to our field, aesthetics. So some clinical things, some content creation, some marketing things. I'm trying to fill in the gaps that many of the conferences out there. Of course, everyone's interested in technique, and what would we be without our techniques? But I want to focus more on, okay, apart from the techniques, there's a whole other portion of things that you need to be able to do excellently to be able to be successful. You could be the best injector in the world, but if no one knows it, you're not going to be successful. So that's kind of what my conference is looking to fill in the gaps of stuff that traditionally has been underrepresented in our field.
so, is it comparable to what you did at Inner Circle? Is it?
Yep.
Do they learn how to
Yeah.
take pictures? So then
Correct. So
it's a strong recommendation. That was one of my most valuable hours, and I watched the video a few times and still try to learn from that. That's amazing. Really,
Well, thanks, man.
go
We'll
there.
have we'll have to get you over this year. So that makes me happy to hear, because again, without being a kiss ass, I have a lot of respect for you, and a lot of people in the industry have a lot of respect for you, and your your ability to see the big picture and create big, excellent things.
Thank you, Chris. Well, yeah, as you know, I want to try to implement the business part a little bit. Giving advice in regards to business. Try to find my way into the business, or into the aesthetic industry. So Julie and me will have an event called Lips and Biz in Miami, 9th of June, and we will have two Inner Circles this year, in August in Zurich again, at the Dolder Grand. This great hotel.
I told my wife this year I want to come as a student. So I'm kind of looking at my calendar. I'm serious. I want to see, like, because it's funny. I'm there giving my talks, and the whole time, like, whenever I wasn't at a talk, I was like running into different, like, there's so many other things to learn. So I found myself very envious of the students at the course. So again, I can't recommend it highly enough. And again, your congratulations to you for creating such an amazing thing. And if Lips and Business is anywhere near as good as that, it's going to be money well spent for sure.
Chris, if you want to come, you will be my special guest, and you will get a free ticket anytime.
Hey, well, it's I'd be flattered. So
sure. Thank you. My last question: what do you think is the aesthetic industry look like in 30 years?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the big revolution is going to be in stem cells and regenerative medicine. My anticipation is we're going to look back at all the things we're doing now and laugh our asses off, or people are going to be laughing at the things that you and I used to be doing in the clinic. Hyaluronic acid, threads, chemical peels, all these things are going to seem barbaric and
Yeah.
antiquated, just as antiquated as paraffin wax injected into people's faces. So once they solve the problem of aging, and that will happen within 30 years, that is going to be the new field. We're not going to be talking about fixing the broken car, so to speak. We're going to be talking about preventing it from ever breaking in the first place.
A big thank you to Dr. Christian Subbio for discussing with me the ins and outs of social media and creative art and how it impacts our business. We will share all links and apps he recommended in the notes below. I was glad to hear he's also struggling with time and social media. Chris is definitely one of the social media masterminds in our industry, and it was super helpful to hear his perspective of quality over quantity and how key it is to be a first mover on social media and social media trends. So thank you, Chris, for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Your feedback is so important to me. So please go wherever you listen to this podcast and rate us, review us, or leave some comments. For daily tips and business advice, you also can follow me on Instagram and TikTok under Dr. Felix Bertram. Thanks again for listening and see you next time.